Hello.
Hello out there.
Hey, people. It is the Zocalo. We are the grand marketplace of all things Babylon 5, our second favorite thing in the entire universe.
Absolutely. And it's Sunday evening. It's 6 p.m. where we are, 9 p.m. where some of you are across the other side of the country. And I don't know exactly what the time is from parts unknown. But anyway, thank you for joining us this Sunday evening.
Sunday.
So I don't know why I have this voice going on, but
Yeah, what is that?
okay, so we were talking earlier on in the show. We were talking about like how I love to game, and I play a game called Diablo, and a Blizzard game. And there's a YouTuber out there. His name is Riker, and he has the best broadcast voice. And I know it's not just his gear, because I know that gear makes you sound like a little bit better sometimes, like
it can, sure,
and stuff. But he just has the best tone in his voice. So every time he comes on, he's like, "What's up, folks? I'm Riker." I'm like, "Wow, God, your voice is amazing."
Kind of like Will Riker, where "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah. So I listen to him all the time. He's like my favorite YouTuber because he has content that I like to watch and listen to, and
has a voice
is just amazing. So I guess like if I want to do the entire show like this, I guess I could.
You could. It's a little bit George Takei.
Oh my.
Wait. Oh my.
Oh my.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be that kind of a show tonight.
Nah. So I'm gonna like reel it back and I go back into norm voice, or right. I could like I remember when I first started podcasting, I thought when I first got my first gig at Trek FM.
Yeah.
On my first show, I was like, "Oh, okay, I need to be like filter it down, go deep into the chest and go to my radio, my broadcasting voice, right?
Super deep,
and like just make sure that it's all chesty and barrely and smooth and flavorful."
You have to be careful with that, though, because if you breathe too deeply, you kind of start sounding like a phone sex operator. I see a lot of podcasters do this, and I'm like, guys, don't.
Yeah, so now I'm back here. I take it up a little bit, like a half an octave.
Just speak naturally. That's my advice to podcasters. If you hate your voice, you can tweak a couple of things, but if you overdo it, it's going to show.
Hey, you know what? We got our first chat is from our buddy Daniel Keller. I know Daniel
Keller.
Haven't seen him in a while. He goes, "Hey guys, did you see the Diablo 4 trailer, Norm?" "I did. So message me, bro. And let's do this."
You guys need to talk.
Yeah. So, but this is not the Diablo cast. This is the Zocalo cast.
It is. And I'm wearing my Ivanova is always right shirt tonight
right.
because she is always right. And I'm doing laundry. So my Zocalo shirts right now are in the wash.
You're doing laundry
sorry about
too?
That.
I'm doing laundry too.
That's what Sundays are for, right? Catching up on the house cleaning and getting up to speed on everything else that you're just not going to make the time for the rest of the week. At least that's the way I'm doing it.
My shirt is out of genre right now, but I'll show it off anyway.
Okay, what is it?
For those of you geeks out there who can guess what this is.
Shadow. I do not know that reference.
Shadow, also an acronym for Strategic Headquarters Alien Defense Organization.
Okay, where is that from? Men in Black?
I will return to that if anyone else can't get this on.
Okay, we'll take guesses in the comments.
Yeah.
So those of you listening out there, maybe, I don't know, you get some sort of brownie point prize. I don't know.
High five.
A high five. A virtual high five.
A virtual high five.
Cool. All right, so why don't we get to, well, no, we should not get to our topic at hand because breaking news here, JMS just tweeted out, an hour ago, that you can get all 92 episodes that he wrote of Babylon 5 on Amazon in like 11 editions. They're about $30 a piece. And oh my God, I want them all.
I know. That's like, that's his Babylon 5 brain in printed form, just like.
Yeah, and this is a cool thing because they were released earlier as a part of B5 Books as a limited edition. Yeah. This sounds like it's going to be a little more ongoing.
Oh, okay.
So that's fantastic for those of us who will need to collect them a little slowly because they are $30 a pop and there's 11 of them. Now, that's still a pretty good value, but nevertheless, oh my gosh.
Whoops, wrong button.
that's a chunk of money. And yeah, what are you doing with the controls there, sir?
Nothing.
Liar.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
So anyway, yeah, he just announced that on Facebook and Twitter. And so if you are interested in screenwriting, like I am, because I'm gonna get some of these things and I'm gonna study the crap out of them. I'm gonna get back into screenwriting, and so I'm gonna see what I can take out of them.
Well, I don't think you could pick a better mentor, teacher, example, reference,
Right?
right?
Yeah.
He knows a thing or two about a thing or two.
Maybe a little.
Just a little.
Just a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm totally down for that. And if you need, holiday gift suggestions for family and friends, well, now you've got something.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's super exciting. Now for the topic at hand, we're talking B5 tech. Does it hold up, essentially?
Bing. That's what I wanted to do.
There it is. Yeah. So we'll be discussing PPGs, data crystals, star furies, jump gate technology, and anything that our listeners here want to throw our way, too. We're game. It's going to be a little bit of a free for all. We're hoping it's interactive.
There was an actual request for this type of a show content on Twitter, which is like kind of where it came up with the idea, because
cool.
We've talked about recently. We've talked about a lot of kind of, I don't know, like more story oriented topics, especially with Day of the Dead, the last show we did before this show.
Right.
And then,
that was very focused on story.
So, but there's a lot of stuff going on with tech in Babylon 5 or in science fiction in general.
Well, sure. Sci-fi is heavy on this kind of thing. We have to envision the future, right?
But how do you envision the future? As an art director and a creative myself, one of the hardest things to do is to kind of future-proof our future designs or designs for the future. How do you do that?
Or can you? Is that the real question?
Yeah.
So we're going to explore that. And you and I have made our lists, and we have not shared our lists with each other.
Nope.
So let me preface my list by saying I have 3 categories with the technology. 1, plausible, meaning maybe we don't have it now, but it's very likely we could in a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
2 is out of date, things that did not hold up. And then 3, a little Deus Ex Machina-ish, but appropriate for sci-fi.
And some of mine are gathering pilot that could have survived and gathering pilot that should not have survived and went into better forms.
All right. So we've got our methodology.
Yeah.
Shall we dig?
Let's do. Let's jump into it. Let's jump gate into it.
Yes. All right. We're in hyperspace now. Why don't we lead off with jump gate technology?
Jump gate technology. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. How plausible do you think it is that someone, the Centauri gave humans jump gate technology, essentially? Do you see that as a legit form of possible space travel in the future?
You know what? That's, in 200 years?
Yeah.
Ish. I don't see why not. Here's the funny thing about technology is that as much as you think that we can't get something done technologically wise, it ends up getting done sooner than you think, right?
Sometimes.
Right. I think the idea is there, and I think you can get to the science, but can you get to the funding? So it was what, Quantium 40 that they had to mine to power the jump gates?
Yeah, something like that, really close.
Right, because that's what, or it's either Quantum 40 or Quantium 40, but that's what Catherine Fry was mining, and she found that motherlode of Quantium 40 on that planet, which she made big bucks on. And I think that if there is kind of like a Starfleet or United Federation or United Earth in a way, then yes, being able to pull the resources of all of the governments of our planet to be able to build that technology, maybe. Now, if we actually had alien influence and say, okay, here's a gift, then that's kind of like a Deus Ex Machina, right?
A little bit, but sharing the scientific progress that would have taken us who knows how long to achieve.
Right. So is it plausible? Yes. Can we do it in 200 years? I think
hard to say.
I think the human race can do anything it wants to in 200 years, if it wants to.
It's all about motivation, isn't it?
Right. And
and especially with technology, the leaps and bounds we have made, let's say in the last 20 something years, I think if you would tell our future or our past selves what we've accomplished, we'd be astounded. Like, oh my gosh, so much has changed technologically.
Right.
And we'd be right. So 200 years, I feel like, yeah, it's not impossible. And I feel like as a method of space travel, it does have limitations, right? It's not instantaneous. You are basically going into a different kind of dimension that doesn't follow the same rules as time and distance.
Right.
And really, I feel like it's a little more plausible than even, say, warp speed. Like
Well,
technologically,
yeah.
I feel we could do jump gate technology, basically creating wormholes
Right.
is
Stable
how I kind
wormhole.
of see it. Yeah.
Right.
And instead of warping space.
I see that as more of a possibility than say warp or folding space like in Dune. You know, the
Uh-huh.
Spice Guild navigators, they use the spice to be able to manipulate and fold space. Literally like what quantum string theory is. You like just compress space and then you send a ship through it and then you unfold space and then it's on the other side
Yeah.
of that compressed space. So
Right, right. And I like that there's only certain channels that you can go through unless you can make your own jump gate. But, we're talking earlier Earth Force just starting to explore and get to know their fellow comrades in the galaxy, essentially. You have only certain avenues that you can do to travel to certain parts of space, which I feel is very realistic. It's
mhm.
it's still beyond our grasp now, but it has its limitations.
Yeah, I think that the analogy of using it like trains, because there are trains that stop at every stop, and then there are trains that are express from say like New Jersey all the way to New York City.
Right?
That's kind of like what hyperspace is, right? It's just
Yeah.
basically like a nonstop express train
Yeah, I like
line,
that. That's a good
right?
analogy.
So is it plausible for alien tech? Absolutely. I have to believe that if an alien race ever comes and visits our planet, unless they already have, then the technology is obviously going to be available because they have space flight, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that whatever technology that they offer us, I think is pretty much realistic. Aside from that, that's just basically up to our own kind of like stick-to-itiveness and know-how and MacGyvering things, right?
I almost feel like humanity might stumble upon it by accident to some extent
I think
if
a
we were
lot
to
of,
do it ourselves.
yeah,
Just
I mean,
like,
I think,
whoa, what happened here?
right? How did that get there from there?
Right. And then it's a matter of figuring out what set of circumstances enabled that to happen so that we could replicate it again and
Right.
have a lot of missteps along the way.
Oh, sure. But I think that's, oh, I know that this is crossing streams, but that's what I loved about the Star Trek series Enterprise.
Uh-huh.
Is that a lot of the stuff that they tried in terms of space flight or space travel or a lot of first ups, it's just kind of like, all right, let's turn on that switch and see what happens.
Right. What does this do?
It's either the light goes on or a lot of smoke happens, right? And maybe, and who knows?
or as Ivanova is known for saying, boom,
Boom, boom, boom, boom, boom, boom,
boom, boom,
boom.
boom.
But not today. No boom
No,
today. Boom
tomorrow.
tomorrow. There's always a boom tomorrow.
There
Right?
should be a boom tomorrow. Then we don't have to work.
So, Shar, I
Some
just
people
want to let
don't
you
have to
know
work.
that Dana popped in. She has a comment.
Hey.
So she goes, someone will want to figure out how to shorten space travel. So yeah, plausible, but we're not getting it on our StreamYard comments. I don't think that's not
No,
fair to
I'm not.
use. We can't
Oh,
see
wait.
it.
You got to click show.
See,
But
that's what
wait.
I did. Nothing
Oh, I
popped up.
ruined it. Okay, I'm sorry. Technical difficulties, guys. Apologies.
Technical difficulties on our Tech Talk show. How awesome is that? So
You
let's see
got to
what we
love
can do
it.
here. I don't
Yeah,
know.
sorry about that. I ruined it.
No, it's okay.
Let's show the banner.
Yeah,
Okay. There we go. We're good. Yeah, the comments aren't showing up, guys. I'm so sorry. This blows.
that's weird.
You know what? We ought to have a toast to the people who are commenting anyway, because
We
we
haven't.
didn't toast and talk about our bravade this week.
That's right. So let's
So,
do that.
yeah, Valtu
Well,
to you.
And if
Now,
you are here, please chime in the comments so we can say hi, or you can
exactly.
say hi.
And you can all say hi to each other. It's a
Right.
live chat. So, what are you drinking, Norm?
So I am drinking in my very special etched glass
Hey,
this High West bourbon. This High
bourbon.
West from Park City, Utah. Not a plug,
Hey,
and we're not sponsored by them. It's just my favorite.
all right, cool. I can dig that.
One
You know
of.
what? Utah is beautiful. Have you ever visited?
I have not been to most of any of Utah.
You need to go.
I
It's
know.
gorgeous.
I know. There's a lot of the that area of the United States that I need to visit. I've never set foot in Wyoming.
That's okay.
You
You're
know,
missing a lot of empty space.
but there's some great American whiskey distilleries in Wyoming, in Jackson Hole, and then Park City.
Wyoming whiskey.
Yeah. One of my favorite breweries of all time. Of all time. Yeah.
Also famous Chugwater chili. They've got their chili festival, and they have a really nice spice blend. It's almost chili weather. Getting close for Southern California, and I cannot wait to make a crock pot of chili.
I know. So for us, we're like all, oh my God,
yeah,
it's almost 60.
Yeah. Well, it was 90 degrees last week, and I'm just thinking, come on. I'm ready.
I was thinking of Terry Lynn the entire time because I know that she is
yeah, I hope you're not freezing in Colorado, Terry Lynn.
So when we're drinking our hot toddies and Char's eating, having her chili, we're thinking of you.
Totally. I'm drinking my pomegranate beverage. It's a shot of vodka, a shot of pomegranate schnapps, top it off with 7-Up.
You love that.
I do. I love it.
That's your Brevari, right?
It's fresh Brevari, no less.
I think
I had to go to Bevmo and restock.
I think we should call that your Jovian Sunspot. Right?
I'd be honored.
So,
all right.
So the cool thing is about what we're doing right now is kind of like where I wanted to get to in what I think is realistic tech for us, obviously now and obviously for the future. And that's just basically instant visual communications, right?
Yeah, real time.
Right, real time communications like Babcom. You know, like Babcom's obviously it's closed circuit TV on a secure channel, but being able to do it like ship to ship, wasn't that cool? Wasn't my tech talk cool right there? Ship to ship. Blah, 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 blah.
It's good stuff. Yeah, really, the only major difference is the distance is far greater.
Right, but you and I have both done this before on, say, using servers like Zoom, or when people use Skype, or when people use
sure,
over IP video. We're doing that from, and again, I'm going to bring up my Trek FM reference when I used to podcast, and you've done this before with Chris Jones, who lives in
Tokyo.
You know, aside from the time difference and maybe some time delay, but that happens in subspace also, where we're talking to each other pretty much simultaneously.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible that we can do that with anybody around the world now.
Right. And
so just imagine light years away.
And from handheld too, right?
Yeah, from your little phone.
Which I think is super cool. And I don't know if I haven't been really paying attention to it, but some smart watches allow you to do that as well.
Oh, really?
Believe. Yeah.
Okay.
I do believe.
I've not had a smartwatch. I'm not really interested in getting one, but that's cool that you can do that.
I don't want to wear anything that's smarter than the bones on my wrist. Right.
Honestly, it's been so many years since I've worn a watch. I just don't think I'd care. Also, you have to have it paired with your phone on Bluetooth. Well, you've got your phone so close by. Why not just use your phone? I mean, do you really need it that close to you? I don't know. Smartwatch users, tell me how I'm wrong.
But that goes into another kind of subsection of what we're talking about with real-time communication, is that it's the link.
Yes. Okay. Right? I want to know your thoughts on this because this is something that I put in the out of date column.
Okay.
Little wrist comlink where it's just an audio transmission.
Mm-hmm. But it
seems it's a little primitive now.
But it did more than just audio. You know, it kind of did some jack of all tradesy type of stuff. Like Sheridan like called an entire nuclear strike off of his comlink.
Well, this is true. Yeah. Hey Siri, nuke Zaha Doom.
Yeah. This is John Newcomb Sheridan. Drop a ship. But yeah, so and I know that when I'm watching Zaha Doom and he, presses a couple buttons and all of a sudden his wife star engages, I'm like, how does that happen? Like, how does that, work out? But
I feel like he had to set that up in advance, don't you?
Perhaps, but that also means that it's capable of doing that. But the other thing, what I do like about that, and you're right, I agree that it's somewhat dated as a communications device. But then again, so are like communicators in a way.
Yeah.
Right, on Star Trek, anything that you had to use your hands with back in the day, since everything's so much hands free now.
Yeah,
you don't really need your hands. Like, here's the crux of the matter with a lot of the technology that we're talking about. Technology, when it's designed now in real time, as you're a designer, you're trying to extrapolate what we believe that we would use as humans 200 years in the future. Right? So in 1987, and probably earlier than that, in 1985 or 86, whenever Herman Zimmerman started production on the Next Generation, they used the liquid crystal touch display technology that inspired the iPad or the phone.
Right.
basically, uh, thermal touch technology. So, but that was done in 87 as something that was just fictional, something that was lit up by, backlight displays created by Michael Kuda and Doug Drexler, right?
Sure. And then somebody made it real,
Right.
figured out how to do it.
That in turn inspired, the designers at Apple to do that and make it a reality. And then they go to Enterprise in 2000. And then when Enterprise launched in, what was it, like 2151? Was that something around there?
Gosh, I don't remember. It's been a
Yeah.
little while since I've watched Enterprise.
But they were still using analog keys because they believed that the future of the Federation, or our future, their past, would still be using analog keys or sliders or, non-liquid crystal display technology, when we know that's not the case anymore.
Sure. I mean, they were trying very hard to bridge the gap between 1960s depiction and then, what we have now technologically, and trying to marry the two. I honestly feel that Discovery did a better job of that, especially with the Enterprise bridge toward the end of season 2. Oh, holy crap. That thing is it's just so beautiful. I love that thing. But, I mean, it's tough though, right? Because you don't totally know just how things really are going to go. And, yeah, I don't know. I get what they were trying to do with Enterprise, but I think they might have gone a little too primitive. One thing that I think maybe we should consider is that maybe technology isn't always going to be as progressive as it's been. Maybe there's going to be some setbacks. Like in the case of Enterprise, what if World War III had set us back through so much destruction that we could not innovate the way that we have been in our modern day right now, and had to essentially play catch up for a little while?
That's a fair point. I mean, we can't obviously predict what's going to happen 200 years from now.
No. And maybe the same kind of deal with Babylon 5, where there's some technological progress, but then there's also some regression. You lose some things, you lose some people, yada, yada.
Right.
But overall, the trend is upward.
What I do like about Babylon 5 technology is that it's not, say, for example, it's not amalgamated or somehow a mixture or a combination of other alien races technologies. Not yet.
Not yet. Although White Star, Vorlon, and Minbari.
Right, but I'm saying like just Earth-based.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that doesn't really happen till Crusade, right? With the second generation White Stars.
Right, but like for, say, PPGs or for links or things of that nature, that's all fairly still plausible.
Oh, certainly.
Right?
Yeah. Speaking of plausible, one of the most plausible things I think in Babylon 5 is the design of the PPGs.
I don't have a PPG yet. I'm so bummed.
I love them. They're compact. They can just fit in that holster really well, but they're powerful. It's now, stop me if I'm wrong about this, but at a distance, you're just going to stun a person. You're going to disable them, right?
Yeah,
at close range, you could kill.
Right. It's the heated plasma has basically has diminishing returns over time, over space.
Okay.
Right? Because it's basically a hot injected ball of plasma, and it's projected out, and then all of a sudden it's it's kind of like you ever fire a Roman candle at somebody? Because I never have.
No, I can't say that I have.
Okay, so,
I kind of thought of it a little more as like a more humane taser, where you're going to incapacitate somebody so that you can cuff them or whatever, but you're not going to just automatically kill them if you fire.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is with PPGs is like there were never PPGs on stun.
That's my thought, is they didn't really need to be. That was sort of like their default setting, unless you were so close that,
I don't know. That's a really good question, because
where's Terry Jones?
Like when it comes to PPG rifles, when breaching pods hit, I mean, it's not like those guys walked away unburned. A lot of those guys get plasma burns when that happens.
So I mean, it's not without any harm, but I mean, as far as a gun goes, it's not automatic. Like you get one slug in you, you're not necessarily going to die.
No, because it depends on where you get hit. Because if you get hit in a place where it's going to cauterize a lot of major arteries,
well, then you're probably screwed. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a weapon. Let's not forget.
Yeah. And what I like about that is it's very respectful of the place of where it's being used. Because if you're using a projectile weapon, one pinhole in the station is going to suck atmosphere out of the station at a pretty accelerated rate, right?
Yeah.
So a hot bolt of plasma is just going to superheat the metal. It's not necessarily going to rupture anything, which is why when Garibaldi whipped out the slug thrower, his grandma's,
Right.
projectile
That
weapon, her
old
revolver.
gun.
It's like that's a bad thing to have on a station because that could just punch right through a wall.
Yeah, with
You know,
serious repercussions. I hadn't even thought about that aspect of it.
that's what I thought the PPGs were designed for. Because and I'm glad that they went with the designs that they retooled for the series proper, because I really didn't like the giant wafer guns that they had in The Gathering.
Yeah,
They were
clunky.
they were goofy. They were just goofy.
It was not the most practical design, whereas a PPG, I feel, really is.
And it looks like something that I know everyone carried a PPG, but it looks like something that Garibaldi would carry or hide under his pillow like he did all the time.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could do that.
But my favorite plasma based weapon that you can actually smuggle on the station was from the very first episode, Midnight on the Firing Line, when Londo assembles his little assassin's gun from like the bottom of his lamp in a pipe. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Now, I did not think to put that on my list. That's a great pick.
Yeah, it's still the same kind of technology. It just had a lot more firepower behind it than a standard PPG. Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love
that's
that gun.
great.
And he destroyed Jakar with that gun.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, it was
would have.
amazing.
Yeah, or would have.
It's
Yeah.
good stuff. Yeah. Okay, cool. What else do you have as a plausible piece of tech?
Well, this is also going to a lot of what I think is capable, obviously today, and still probably would be capable if a little bit primitive for that time. Is I still like interactive displays. I still like being able, like, okay, so I think it was Kalane. He from the Trigati. He comes on board and he walks up to a panel and he goes, "Show me this place." And it was Babcom system, right?
Yeah.
But then you could like follow along. Like there are different interactive wall displays where you can like find out information, and they're just there. They're just touch screens that are kind of innocuous,
Yeah.
but they're still realistic and they're still there. And it's kind of like airports look that way now.
I was just going to say they're so realistic that we have these today. I mean, you can say to Siri or Alexa, "Hey, show me a map of Babylon 5," and it will give it to you.
Right. Right.
Going forward in the future, this might have actually not been forward thinking enough.
Yeah, it's so when production on Babylon 5 started, and you got to be careful because sometimes you have to either make a radical change to production to keep up with the Joneses, i.e. the Star Trek of the time, or
Hmm.
or you kind of like cut your thumbs and say, okay, this is the way we're going. But I think that when John Iacovelli was doing a lot of his visionary work on how this is going to look, I think that they didn't want to go too far, too clean, on that side of the equation, the Herman Zimmerman side of the equation.
Yeah, they didn't want it to be too slick, just because Babylon 5 is more gritty.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
true.
And quarters, or everything is like a little bit more hands-on, where Star Trek, at least the Star Trek of the Next Generation moving forward, they're a little more sanitary or sanitized.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that that 250,000 humans and aliens are touching things all over the place on Babylon 5.
Like Zach said, every square inch of this station has somebody's fingerprint on it.
Right. And you don't want to, obviously you want to make sure that their Pak Marad washes their hands before they leave the bathroom.
God, and you do not want to be in the bathroom when they are. That's for
But
sure.
that was kind of a segue into a really cool thing that I like. Is there was one time where Garibaldi and Sinclair were in the men's room, and they put their hands underneath this dryer thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, that's like basically like what you have the Dyson Airblade in bathrooms right now.
Pretty much. Only
Right?
it's doing all the work, right? It's sanitizing and drying.
Yeah,
Correct?
but it was neat, and they looked at kind of like the cuticles. It's like, oh man, this this disinfecting force field, man, it's like drying out my cuticles. But they did that. It was just very natural. I love that.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And a necessity, I would think, on a station like Babylon 5, where, I mean, one of the big concerns, right, about possibility of meeting alien life is what sort of diseases do they have that they would
Right.
transmit and kill us, or vice versa? Germs everywhere, baby.
I mean, could you imagine even like, and that's the one thing I love about Babylon 5, it'll actually go there. But could you imagine like getting off of like a transport and the first thing you knew is you're trying to find a bathroom, right? And
Right,
oh
because you
man,
do.
And then you see like all the signs, like, human, Minbari, Narn, Centauri, Pakmara, like
Yeah.
the Vree.
Navigating the future is going to be hard.
Wouldn't it have been hilarious if there was like just a bunch of icons, like these are the races that can use this bathroom, or
Yeah, what would all the iconography be?
or you have one bathroom that's just like all alien welcome, like all of them.
All alien restroom.
Yeah. What would that look like? You're a designer. You should just make something like that.
Oh my gosh, I'll have to think about that, tumble that through my head. That could be a lot of fun. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We have a couple of comments showing up now from
Yay.
Dana.
Sweet.
In the 60s, my father worked on computers that filled an entire room. Yeah, that's how big they were in that day. And it was, they had the computing power of a calculator.
Yeah.
That we would know today.
That was, they kind of addressed that in that movie Hidden Figures, where it was the big IBM, Big Blue.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing was huge. And so it's amazing that now we have more computing power in this thing than that whole room a short 50-something years ago. That's not that long.
See, that's what.
But that is as far as we've come.
Right? That's what we're talking about.
So Dana's saying, what can we accomplish in 200 years? It could be a lot, but there could also be those setbacks that maybe make technology less of a priority. It's going to be interesting to see, like even in the next 20 years, where we're at with that.
Well, I don't want to sound like fatalistic about what's going to happen, say 20, 50, 100 years from now. But what I do like that they addressed in Babylon 5 was at the end of Deconstruction of Falling Stars, where they had the Great Burn, where Garibaldi basically duped, the nuclear holocaust that ravaged Earth. And then all of a sudden, they started off in kind of like a medieval, a medieval reboot.
Yeah. Yeah. Had to rebuild going back from basically hundreds of years.
Right. So you had that young monk, he was still kind of like illuminating his manuscript under the tutelage of Brother Alwyn, who was obviously on Lashak at the end. And so you knew that the White Stars were still out there, kind of like watching it, make sure that...
Kind of a weird mix.
Yeah.
Like, a couple of relics left over, but really, I mean, I would say by and large, that society was sent back to the Dark Ages practically.
And that could happen. I mean, the eugenics wars supposedly did that to Earth. And so did the Third World War.
Right. So that's what I'm saying, is there could be serious setbacks depending on where we put our priorities.
So what about we covered a lot of plausible. What about implausible?
Implausible. What about the Great Machine? I mean, this is a Deus Ex Machina that's used judiciously.
Mm-hmm.
It's very sci-fi, and I'm not knocking it. But in terms of it being like a real thing and being able to play with time and space and opening chasms in Sector 14 so that they can send Babylon 5 or Babylon 4 through time, I don't think we're ever going to really be able to do something like that.
Not human technology, I don't think.
No.
Right?
No. Even in 200 years, I don't see us advancing into things like that.
Do you think that somewhere out there that there is that thing?
The universe is how many billions of years old? Absolutely plausible.
Absolutely
not
plausible.
By us, but sure, anything is possible. We are far from the height of creation, in my opinion.
I always wondered, like, what something like that would look like. Would it be something like with that kind of a vision, or would it be something like The Matrix, and it would be like a completely blank white room that's just your like psychic energy being tapped into? You know what I mean?
Right. There's a lot of ways you can interpret that. I do kind of like the white room, though, just because it has that minimalistic, ethereal look.
Mm-hmm. Well, science fiction usually they usually reference kind of like the white room set when it comes to tapping into kind of any type of like mental technology or mental power. Right?
Yeah.
It's just we don't know how to explain it, so stick them in a glowing white room.
Exactly. That's sort of the default, right? But it does make some sense too.
But I think it's neat that they assumed, or at least the Great Machine assumed, that whoever was going to take its place or Draw's place was going to be humanoid bipedal.
Right.
Right.
Interesting to make that assumption. Now, with the Great Machine being not all-knowing, but certainly probably the most knowledgeable thing out there, there has to be a reason why it knows that.
Well, if the Great Machine knows, this is something that I was like thinking about. It doesn't really like bug me from that this was poorly written, but the Great Machine being able to see time forward and backward and be able to understand that. So the Great Machine is essentially, it's just a roller coaster that you can see fate, right? Right. Like Ivanova's like, don't, follow this, follow that. Because
right.
if it knows all of this stuff is going to happen, if it can see forward in time and backward in time and design who's going to be the next host and know who's going to be the next host and kind of like maneuvers the people that are going to be the next host, then it's really just fate playing its own kind of weird, funny game with everybody, right?
It's creating its own destiny.
It's the destiny machine.
Pretty
right?
much. Now, here's a thought. Is the Great Machine sentient?
Is it sentient? I would say no, because it needs a host. It can't think for itself.
So it needs
right?
the host to be sentient, essentially.
And yeah, it's kind of like the light side of shadow technology. Like the shadow ships need the telepaths, in order to run the ship. So
Symbiotic.
the symbiotic relationship, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
But it's kind of like, I think the Great Machine was also written as Joe's trap, because Joe loves writing trapdoors, right?
Absolutely.
So it's the trapdoor that allowed them to get out of a lot of scraps, And once you kind of like accept that being in the show, you're like, okay, a lot of shows, when they're written well enough, they have that kind of all right, we can't do anything about how everything's building up. We can't deal with all this. It's all coming to a head. So let's just activate Wakanda. Right?
Yeah.
Don't know where adamantium comes from? Wakanda. Vibranium?
It doesn't matter.
Wakanda. Medical science? Wakanda. It's like it's something that we can't explain? Wakanda.
Pretty much.
Sorry, I love Black Panther, but I've always had a big beef with Wakanda. Wakanda was always the Swiss Army knife of excuses.
Well, and yeah, you could say the Great Machine is that sort of a thing where if you need it, it's there. What was great, though, is that it was used so sparingly. And there were even a couple of times Ivanova said, hey, should we talk to Drawl? And Sheridan says, no, I want to use him as a very last resort. Let's not get him involved until we absolutely have to.
Oh, he was definitely kind of like there's like the big bad on the good side and the big bad on the bad side. Drawl was like the big bad on the neutral side.
Yo.
Right?
Bingo. Yep.
And it's kind of like, hey, guys, kind of cool it, like, because I will smoke both y'alls if you don't pipe down right now.
Right. You do not want to get on his shit list.
Right.
For sure. Yeah, you will die.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got another one that seems, and I don't know, maybe you'll argue me on this. I don't know. Maybe the alien healing device is implausible. What do you think about that?
Here's the thing that I took away from the alien healing device. I saw that as an alien version of transfusion.
Okay. But you're playing with energy.
Blood
strictly
is just
speaking, it's not even a transfer of fluids.
But I mean but we're talking now that kind of goes into the realm of just kind of like calibrating the technology to human technology, right? So, and it's also a form of corporal punishment, which I also like.
Right.
So, and the way that they do kind of like lethal injection is also a form of pushing physical fluid, into the accused or the convicted. So I don't think it's implausible. I know why they wrote it, and it's obviously they wrote it and they used it, very successfully as a storytelling.
Oh, did device,
they? Right. But I do think that it's kind of like we have to take it in terms of looking at it as energy as opposed to matter, right? So
certainly
plasma is basically it's organic matter, and then energy is obviously not organic matter. So
I guess it's the difference between something like plasma or blood versus electricity.
Or the
way I saw it, like when Marcus is giving his life to Ivanova, it's sort of like a jump start, essentially regenerating her cells.
Right. And the funny thing is that I don't know why I got stuck on it for a while, but I was like reading about Schrodinger's cat theory, and then it goes into this whole thing about quantum and quantum state, and all the quantums are all these little, all these microparticles that can only be seen if you fix on a certain point. But the way I see it is that what the alien healing device did is that it stripped down the energy from this basic atomic structure, like the electrons and protons, and ripped that out of your body, and then re-injected it into somebody else.
That's
And
kind of the conclusion I had to come to as well,
right,
is it just going down to that level. Yeah.
right. And I think that if they can separate and identify the base molecule building block of the universe, the Higgs boson particle,
Uh-huh.
then I think that it's possible that even we eventually would be able to get to some type of energy transferal technology.
Hmm. Okay. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to bring it up though,
Yeah.
because yeah, I don't know. Being the son of a doctor, you might have a little more knowledge of this than I might.
Well, I mean, taking at it from I mean, let's look at it this way. When I'm looking at, because I told everybody about my dad in the last show, and when I was looking at new cancer treatments, they can actually like comb out certain cells and fight them with basically attack cells made from your own DNA, which I think is like you're talking about.
Really?
Yeah, you're talking about disease warfare on a cellular level, right? Cellular
Okay, so you
manipulation.
know what? I changed my stance. This is
Yeah,
plausible. In 200
yeah,
years, this could happen. Also, the whole thing of it being alien technology, though,
right.
gives
Now,
us the out, just in case.
Dr. Laura being able to figure that out, that may have been a little bit of a stretch, but she knew enough that it did what it needed to do, and it returned her conscious back to her and uh, her hope of being a healer again, no matter the cost, I guess.
I love that you called her Dr. Laura like I do. Thank you.
It's Dr. Laura.
She's Dr.
Yeah.
Laura.
Mhm.
Yeah, the good Dr. Laura.
Yeah. Yeah. The good Dr. Laura. So yeah, I'd love to hear like what the listeners have to say about that. The alien healing device. There's
Yes,
obvious,
please.
being in an alien technology, that's obviously plausible. But could we get there
As
as
humans.
humans? That would be super
And how
interesting.
would we use it? Because I could see
Mm,
it being anything for like a treatment for tumors to capital punishment and everywhere in between. You got a little problem, you got internal bleeding or something, you
right.
could fix that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And that goes into like another. It's not really so much technology I was thinking of, but there was a really interesting topic that I read about, and it has to do with if you remove somebody's personality, does that person any more longer exist?
Oh,
And
brain wiping.
right. And okay, so I was just recently watching some Star Trek Next Generation episodes, and I came upon this episode called The Outcast.
Okay, yeah.
And in the end, the outcast, the character in question, I think her name was Soren, the one that fell in
Uh-huh.
love with Riker.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the punishment for violating her society's culture of being androgynous is to be basically remapped. Her instincts were going to get remapped into what fit into their society, which is basically a genderless society. So the person that she fought for, the independence that she fought for and put at risk, when that's removed from somebody using, they called it psychotactic treatments, which is
Okay.
basically kind of like lobotomy.
Okay.
Is
Uh-huh.
that is that a form of euthanasia in a way, or when you remove somebody's personality and turn them into something that they're not? Is that
What are
like
they?
what are they? And I see that as being kind of like what what the Psycor would do to somebody using that type of technology, aside from
Oh,
just
Psychor definitely.
right.
Yeah.
So I find that as a form of technology in this universe because it does have to do with like medical treatment of a sort. And I
Uh-huh.
think that it's absolutely plausible for that to happen in the time frame that it's going to happen in Babylon 5. Maybe not at the telepathic level, but definitely at the technological level.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Now, if suddenly telepaths start cropping up in about 100 years,
Mhm.
that'll be interesting. But
That'll be
I have a
terrifying.
feeling the Vorlons are not really that into us.
No, they're so not into you.
Yeah. Okay. What else have you got on your list? Do you have anything that's more plausible?
Mm-hmm.
Look on the bright side a little bit. What do you got?
So one of my favorite episodes is the episode where no compromises, where it's the only episode in Babylon 5 where they really dealt with kind of like how the docks worked on Babylon 5.
Mm. Uh huh.
And
Uh huh.
it's not so much the technology per se, it's just the application of human technology as it applied to dock workers and dock workers' health. Because one of the things that I loved is that in Star Trek, you have tractor beams and anti-gravity this and all these ways to be able to safely dock things and safely transporters, obviously shuttles,
Sure.
things like that nature.
Yeah.
But no compromises. They don't the only thing that they really referenced that was an issue was that, there it goes, try working a 0G cargo loader for 12 hours on a shift and see what that does to your body. They're talking about the physical ailments of actual manual labor that still exists in that capacity 200 years from now.
Yeah. Oh, this is
Right?
so good. Just because we know in the here and now what working in 0G does to the body. So they've got to be doing constant maintenance to
Right?
be maintaining their bone structure, their muscles, all of that.
Exactly. So aside from the physical effects of what they're doing, because they are loading and unloading certain, I guess, shuttles or whatever they're servicing, they're doing it in a way where they're putting their body at extreme measure to be able to do that
Yeah.
and that's why those cargo loaders or something like that exploded, or like a sonic torch or whatever the case may be. And that's what, I don't know if you watched the show, and I think you would love it if you watched it. It's The
What is,
Expanse.
yeah, I've not watched it. No.
You would, it's basically, I think the Expanse for me is kind of like the spiritual successor of Babylon 5 on TV right now.
Mm. That
Uh,
good? Really?
that good, really.
Wow. Okay.
Spiritual successor. It just,
Spiritual.
but you feel a lot of that, like what's going on there, where there are kind of like ice haulers and space haulers out there that are really kind of like feeling the effect of long-term space exposure, long-term space labor exposure, and the pitfalls of what that can do to a body, what that can do to you on duty. And I think that's something that I just really wish that they did a little bit more of in Babylon 5.
Yeah, I think that
You
would be
know,
relatable to a modern audience as well as, I mean, a lot of people would say, well, why don't you just put gravity in and solve that problem? Well, that's probably really impractical for a loading dock to constantly be doing that. Let a ship in, gravity, let the
right.
people come in and unload. No, no. And especially with the constant rate at which they have ships moving to and fro.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Speaking of which, if you're ready to transition, how about the fact that Earth ships struggle to create their own gravity? It's not nearly as well done as, say, a Minbari ship.
Yeah, that's what I also loved about the station, is that the human technology is it's very prevalent in the gravity rotational segments of the larger ships. Like the Hyperion class ships didn't have that, but all those guys were strapped in. We saw that, right?
Right,
You
right.
know,
Yeah, and this strikes me as one of those challenges that we're going to be working on for a long time, and
Mhm.
maybe we'll achieve a certain amount of success in it with our space travel. But I feel like Babylon 5 is pretty accurate on this one. In about 200 years, we will not have perfected it, but we will have gotten a lot better because we'll have to innovate.
Could you imagine this? I mean, I know that the power source is the fusion reactor, but I mean, just kind of like think about like what Ivanova would have to do from an energy maintenance standpoint. Like, okay, is this getting enough power? Is this getting enough power? You're going to get draw power from this. You're going to draw power from that. If this goes
Yeah.
down, that goes up. You know what I mean? Like that's
Lot of things have to work right to keep this one little thing going
right.
properly.
And that's one of the things that I did like that they did was when Garibaldi had to purge the AI from the computer system so they could go back
Uh-huh.
in, and then Harlan
Yeah.
Ellison took over.
Yes.
I love the fact that computers then will still be completely fallible.
And
You know?
cranky.
Yeah.
So cranky.
Yeah. And that
Harlan Ellison was the perfect voice for that AI. I just want to put that out there.
but it's I'm just glad that computers aren't perfected and that they still require a certain percentage of human interaction
Yes.
to be able to work. Right.
Overall that's one of my overarching things that I appreciate about Babylon 5 technology is yes, it is more advanced and yes, there's a certain degree of sci-fi futuristic elements to it, but it doesn't strike me as um, so streamlined and just so perfect that no, it's not all automated. It's not all just going to happen perfectly. No, we're going to have problems. It needs humans to operate. I don't know if we'll ever. A lot of people will argue me on this, but I think we will reach a point where we want humans to control the technology.
I think there has to be at least a basic minimum of interaction. Say, okay, so for example, like replicators. Okay, so I was just watching, what was it? It was an episode where O'Brien basically had to take care of all the replicators, and he started talking funky because something like spewed a disease through the replicator system, right?
Okay, I don't remember this episode. Was it TNG or DS9?
DS9, DS9.
Oh,
I'm on a,
okay.
I'm on a huge DS9 kick right now, and I know a lot of
Oh,
people are
okay.
happy about that. So
You know,
anyway,
I really need to watch DS9. I've been saying that since the documentary came out in May, and I haven't done it.
just sprinkle one in every once in a while in your 26-hour day,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, honestly, I'm spending what little time I have to watch Doctor Who, and that's about as much time as I get to just actually sit down and critically watch a show right now
But
on
look,
my own.
so I'm going to equate this to something that happened at my work the other day, where essentially the email servers were getting switched over and email was down.
That always sucks.
Oh
Yep.
my God. It's like everything just, and like the internet was funky. Everything just grinded to a halt. And I'm like, you guys see a problem with this, right? Orders can't go out.
Yeah.
You can't talk to customers because their orders aren't going out.
Your
You
whole
know,
production process gets corrupted,
yeah,
essentially.
it just gets backed up. And sometimes, when human interaction isn't, at least again at a base level of involvement, you can't really depend on technology 100% of the time, because when technology fails, it fails horribly.
Hardcore. I can just imagine. I mean, we've had some brownouts and blackouts here in Southern California because of the fires. Imagine if we were 5 days without power in all of Southern California. Can you imagine the impact that would have on everywhere, not just
Yeah.
here? But the fact that things like you can't access information like records, you can't transport to and fro nearly as easily, orders you can't process, it's all computerized. We're so screwed if
Mm-hmm.
and when the grid happens to go out.
Yeah, and even if you wanted to find a workaround, everything's so much tied into it. It's kind of like,
Oh yeah, no amount of generators can fix this.
no, it's the interweb. The hooks are too deep.
They are. Oh, Dana's
Yeah,
got a great comment. Can
yeah,
I
go for it.
interject with this?
Yeah.
Not only is artificial gravity going to be a challenge going forward in space travel, but what about radiation protection? That's a great thought, because Earth shields us from a lot of this radiation in space.
Right.
We're going to have to be a lot more careful.
Right. Or else we're going to be glowing or mutating really quick.
And you know what? A death from radiation poisoning. I watched Chernobyl. That's looks slow and agonizing and terrible.
Yeah. Let's not do that. Right.
Mm-mm.
I mean,
Wow.
even their suits, because I'm pretty sure that the Star Furies have a base level of radiation protection, but I'm sure that their environment suits do.
Sure,
Right.
sure. But just the mere fact that we're going to have to take care of that
And
to
don't
the
you love
point where we're
that
not even
though?
talking about it. What?
Don't you love the fact that, okay, so I know that, believe me, this is no hate on Star Trek. It's just a really good comparison. See, Star Trek
Mhm.
has a certain vision, and it always has.
Yes.
But what I love about Babylon 5 is that I think Babylon 5 was brave enough to say that we're not going to get there yet, not to the level of Star Trek technology, right?
Well, also, Babylon 5 thought about these problems
Mhm.
and tried to address them, at least to some extent. They tried to be as scientifically accurate as they could be. You know, they were consulting with people at JPL and all sorts of stuff.
I don't think we ever saw. Did we ever? Well, we did see, I guess, some type of encounter suit in Discovery when they were flying those really fast ships around asteroids and stuff. Weren't they
Oh,
wearing encounter
sure.
suits? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
like
encounter suits.
flight
I
suits.
mean, I'm
I'm
sorry, I'm
assuming
envisioning Kosh, you know.
a different type.
That's a different encounter suit. Yeah.
That's keeping the radiation in, not the radiation
Yeah.
out.
Indeed. Yeah. No, but yeah, you're right. It's that sort of a thing.
I should say flight
In
suits.
principle.
Flight suits.
Flight suit. That's more of a Trek term.
Yeah. So I think we have time for one more example. So you had your
Okay.
plausible and you had your implausible, and then you had one more.
Completely out of date. Yeah, the
yeah.
only other thing I've got in that column are, of course, the view screens, because they never envision flat screens. An easy one, so we can just chuck that and move on. Have you got anything else?
Headsets.
Headsets.
Yeah. I mean, like, I know that it looks good on like Lieutenant Corwin, Josh Cox, and he has.
You know, it
little
does.
Yeah, he looks good in that, right? And it works.
He does. So does
But
Sheridan.
but all those like the intercom, like the headsets when he's on a ship or whenever they have one of those things. I'm like, not really. I mean, do we get it's
You know, these days I just envision, okay, they're doing their TED Talk.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that. Like I was at a play the other night, and I saw you can it's fairly clear, and you can see that they flesh tape the microphones to the actors' foreheads,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, even those microphones were smaller than the ones they wore in Babylon
Yeah.
5 with better pickup.
Yeah.
So, so again, it's one of those things where it's just it's a sign of the time.
Yeah.
That's the one, I guess, catch 22 when it comes to any type of science fiction design. When you're thinking of, okay, it's going to look cool, and we have to have our actors be comfortable, interacting with all of this technology, and not make it uncomfortable for them to the point where they're not giving a good performance. But
Right.
you know, is this going to kind of like pigeonhole us later on? And I guess I'm sure some shows are like, let's worry about that when we get a second season or a third season,
Maybe
right?
so. Maybe so. Also, if you're not thinking forward enough, as that might be, and it's hard to innovate. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not knocking at all because I don't
Right.
know how good of a job I would be doing at it either. But it's just, some stuff now, it does date itself. And you know what? Every sci-fi series has that problem.
Oh,
Just
totally.
because when you're working in the future, you really don't know what's going to be shaping that future. You're just doing your best guess. And so, hey, you know what? I can't knock it too hard.
Right. And I don't really have too much of a problem when it comes to like maybe a couple hundred years, but one of my biggest concerns, and I know this is completely shifting gears, and I'm glad they didn't do it in Crusade, and I'm glad they kind of they tried to stray away from it up to a point in Deconstruction of Falling Stars because it was jumping in time so far ahead in certain
Mm.
increments. But
Uh-huh.
Star Trek Discoveries, they ended up being like what, 900 years in the future or something like that.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of things there. They can do whatever they want, but they've also got to create what the future might look like that far ahead. That has to be a crazy challenge. So
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see where they're going to go with that. I mean, how are they going to innovate like that, right?
Good luck.
Yeah. Right. You
Yeah.
better have some damn good ideas because you're
Exactly.
going there.
So what about things like small things, before we wrap this up, like credit chips? I mean, why?
Sure.
I mean, money's
You
still a
know,
thing, or I mean, it's kind of
um,
like, is it like having like the Apple Pay on these things, like,
more or less, that's how kind of I see it is just like, yeah, it's everything's going to be electronic. No surprise there. The fact that there's still currency, not completely a surprise. A little
No.
disappointing, but a surprise, not a surprise.
Yeah, yeah.
Star Furies seem completely plausible to me as a
Oh
form of
yeah,
defense as well as travel.
yeah. And they really thought out Star Fury, like kind of like the physics of Star Furies,
Yeah, and
right?
they're beautiful to look at. They look like they'd be fun to pilot.
Yeah, well, yeah, because you can like hit those thrusters, hit the retro thrusters, spin around, go
Right?
forward, let the
Like
inertia kind
Johnny.
of like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, 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 super
Yeah.
cool.
So that's what hit my plausible part of things. What do you think of? Okay, I know you love data crystals, but do
Hmm.
you think that that's a real plausible form of information transmission going forward?
So that's a really interesting thing because I have either heard or read or heard somebody say something about liquid data storage.
I've heard little blurbs about that, and maybe that's something you shared with me. I don't
Yeah.
remember exactly, but yes.
Yeah. So there are all different types of kind of like experimental, I guess, data storage that's being worked on right now. And I don't think like crystalline technology is like the lattice structure of crystalline technology is how that data is stored, kind of like root systems in a tree,
Uh-huh.
and that's from what I understand is like the most either sophisticated hierarchical structure of being able to store and access and organize data that they were envisioning. So you can like
Mm.
just store tons, like, I don't even know like what the proper term would be for that, but
Yeah, we're talking beyond like how many millions of terabytes?
right. Yeah, we're talking like what's more than a terabyte?
I don't know. In Star Trek, they use gigaquads a lot. I have no idea what sort of measure that is.
Essentially, they're kind of like the Star Trek version of, I guess, like isolinear chips,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, only portable, like our USB drives of today, only they're going to have a much greater capacity.
But what I love about the crystals are that it's still organic. They're still crystals, right?
Yeah.
So they're just being able to use the crystal, again, the organic cellular, in a way, structure of a crystal, the crystalline structure, and use it to store their data and have the data kind of like lock into the structure and then have that extracted out,
Yeah.
right?
I also wonder, like, with a more organic component like that, is that sort of like an environmental issue in a way where
Mm.
that's like the better version of something? Like, do we run out of silicon in the future or something like that?
Well, I'm thinking that, and I didn't see it too much, at least from Earth, and I'm wondering if things like, like were they just kind of like really, really cheap diamonds or like cubic zirconia or something like that, you know?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe we just have such an overabundance of these data crystals that we've got to do something with them.
Yeah.
Why not storage?
And make
Everybody
sure,
needs it.
especially if you're Max Eilerson, make sure that you wipe your data crystals, please,
Please.
or else you're gonna get my little Pakmara
Yeah,
in the
ew,
store,
dude, get off of Alien Pornhub, would you?
right?
Yeah, dude, bruh. There's probably a more clever name, but that's all I can think of right now. Because we are out of time already.
Let's hit a couple of these last comments though, because
Let's do that.
our viewers are the best.
Yes.
So Dana says technology is great when it works anyway. Absolutely.
Word.
When it works, it's awesome. When it's not awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Daniel Keller says, so overall, we appreciate the approach that B5 took with his technology in the show. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great way to
absolutely.
sum it up.
Yeah. I mean, they risked a couple things, but for the most part, I think the reason why Babylon 5's narrative works as a whole is because they did keep it grounded in a certain reality.
Yeah, and they tried to think this through. And they did it in a very practical way that does make sense. And so, you know what? Yeah, some stuff maybe has dated itself, but I think we can say that overall, not bad. Pretty
Not
good.
bad. Yeah. I'd say better than most. I'd say better than most.
Yeah, and not everything is a freaking Deus Ex Machina, which sci-fi loves to do.
True.
Being so futuristic that everything has a superpower. And you know what? That gets tiring really fast. And so I've said it before, but I'll say it one more time. I appreciate the practical aspect of B5's technology, that it is hands-on, that it is human controlled, that it's better than what we have now in a lot of ways, and yet it's not perfect. And that's good.
Yes, you're right. That's a good thing. It's not, it's like for whatever reason, like it's not just this silver box of prettiness,
Yeah. No. In fact, the
No.
more that I think about it, the more I really do appreciate it. There's just something about it that, I don't know, it's very relatable
Mhm.
and it makes a lot of sense. There's times when I'm watching Discovery and I'm just thinking, this is too easy.
Yeah.
Nothing is easy on Babylon 5.
No, and a friend of mine, who's in the business, he says you only have so many asks for an audience. You can only ask them to suspend their disbelief so many times, and you shouldn't have to do it with the technology or the hands-on approach to the show. That shouldn't be the ask. The ask should be in the narrative and not necessarily in the production.
Yeah, use it where you really need it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Good stuff.
Well, that's the show.
Wow,
We've done it.
Fast.
Still got a little bit of Rivari. Not much, though. Not for long.
Val 2.
Val 2. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I'm sorry the comments were lagging a little bit.
That was weird. Yeah.
I think we got the majority of them, but if we missed you and didn't give you a shout out, I do apologize. We'll try again next week, see how it goes.
Yeah, so we'll have one more show next week, then we'll be off for Thanksgiving, and then we'll be right back on it. So
yes, and we're still going to do Sleeping in Light, yes? Is that what we're going to do?
For that show?
For the 17th. That's what I've got written in the calendar. Are you still down for that? Or I have an idea. I'll propose this because either way, we might be ugly crying. We talked a long time ago about doing Drunk History, Babylon 5 version.
Ooh, that could be fun.
We just drank a lot and we come up, like, you come up with a story that you want to retell. I'll come up with a story I want to retell. And then that'll be our show.
That'll be our Thanksgiving show.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll do that instead of ugly crying in front of you all for a full hour. How
I'm
about
not.
that?
I'm not ready for that.
That might be a little more entertaining. Let's be honest.
It could be. Either
Yeah.
way. Either way, drinking's going to be involved.
Oh, I was gonna get plastered for the sleeping in light thing because I've put a lot of things on the internet, but that might be the one thing that I might be embarrassed about.
We'll have to wait and see.
So we're gonna do drunk history instead. Yes.
Yes, that sounds
Okay.
amazing.
So we don't have this figured out. We'll figure out what stories we're going to tell. Should we tell our listeners or not? Should we keep it a surprise?
Oh, I think they're going to want to tune in for this one.
Yeah. So do we want to tease it? That's what I'm saying. Like, do we want?
Oh, you mean like on social media?
Yes, telling people what we're going to retell, super drunk, or leave it a surprise.
Well,
Because once we determine,
I think we'll just kind of float out a spoiler, and then say like you don't want to miss this one.
oh, you just want to be vague about it. Okay,
Yeah.
you tease, you clickbaiter.
That's how I drive the numbers. All right.
I mean, I hate to say it, but it does work. Okay, well, we're gonna do that. Bring your brevari, everybody, because we're sure gonna do it.
Yep.
And until next week, everybody, it's gonna be a good one.
Be seeing you.
Drinksgiving, baby.
Drinks. All righty.
File 2.